Hey guys, it's Stephanie and I am Stacks on Stacks on Stacks. So today I'm coming to you guys with my October wrap up. I had to think about what month it was there for a second because I'm in November, but I'm wrapping up October. I think I'm tired. I'm filming this in the middle of the Read-A-Rama and I've actually been doing a lot of things in addition to reading and So I read 9 books this month, which I think is pretty good. One of them was a reread, but still 9 is pretty good. I think only like 2 of those books were out of like my fall TBR thing that I put forward. So if I'm really going to make that fall TBR true, I'm going to have to do a lot of reading off of just that list for hopefully the next 6 weeks. We'll have to see about that. First book I read in the month of October was The BFG by Roald Dahl. Now, I did a video on this, a movie versus book video on this, and those are getting okay reviews. I've done 2 kiddish books, so maybe that's why next month I'm going to be doing Murder on the Orient Express, or this month, you know what I mean. I'm going to be doing Murder on the Orient Express, so maybe it'll get a little more love. I'm not really sure, but I did like this book. It is a book about a girl who basically gets swept away by a giant because she sees him, so he steals her so that she won't be telling everybody, hey, I saw a giant. But he is not a mean giant that eats kids. He's a friendly giant, but he lives with like mean giants that eat kids. So it's basically her adventures with him, and it's cute. And it's a kid book. It's not the next great American novel, but it was pretty good. I gave it a 3.6 technically, and more a 3. No. I gave it a 3.6 personally because I did enjoy it, and more of a 3.0 technically. It wasn't super challenging, but it was a good read. Next, I read 1,000 Pieces of You by Claudia Gray, and I actually started this like 2 months ago, and I set it down, and I literally had like 40 pages left, so I just picked it up and finished it. So not all that impressive, but I did finish it, and I would say I did like this book. It had more romance in it than I think I was expecting. I think at one time Maureen Keevy said it was a little more romancy, so I was kind of expecting it, but the idea of this book is parallel universes and crossing those lines into the other parallel universe. So our main character here is Marguerite, and her father is killed at the beginning of this book, and she wants vengeance, and she's told that she can get vengeance, but she has to catch the guy, and he left their dimension for another dimension. So she gets the little necklacey device that her parents invented, gets on it, chasing him down, and she goes to different dimensions. Now, I actually listened to this book, the first whatever percentage, and then I read the last 40 pages. But the first part that I listened to, the narrator did a very good job because our character is American, and then when she jumps to a parallel universe, if she's British, which she is sometimes, her, in quote language is British, and then everything else is her normal American accent. And the author does, or the narrator does a really good job with it. And there's a point where she's reading her as a Russian princess too. I mean, not spoiling too much, but she's Russian at another point. So it's kind of fun because she does a really good job of reading it, even though I did read the last whatever pages myself. She did a really good job reading it. And so I did enjoy this book. I gave it about a 3.7. Personally, I did enjoy it. There's 2 more books, so I'll probably read them eventually. I like the concept. I wish there was more travel and more technical and less romance, but the fact there are 2 more books kind of makes me think, well, there will be more technical. But I did rate it technically about a 3.2. It's still pretty good. The writing was still pretty good, but it wasn't amazeballs. The next book I read this month was The Series of Unfortunate Events, Book 12, The Penultimate Peril. And, I was just ready for these to end. I found out some good information in this book and I liked it. Or personally, I gave it like a 3.4 stars. Technically, I gave it a 2.5. It's about what I've been giving most of them. They're fine. Maybe I'm just not, young enough to really appreciate that it's basically the same book over and over and over, and they're never getting answers on anything. The next book I read this month was Mistborn, The Final Empire, Book 1. This was my reread. I read this like 4 or 5 years ago, and I loved it, and I just didn't continue in the series, so I'm continuing on in the series, and I read this one in October. I'm hoping I will get to Well of Ascension in November. So if I don't, I will be getting into it in December. I will be reading it before the end of the year. Everybody who's read these is like, why haven't you continued on? I'm like, because when I read them 5 years ago, I think there was a sequel, but that was it. It wasn't like the great thing that it is now, because I read this a long time ago. I love this book. I love this book. I love this book. I love Brandon Sanderson. Brandon Sanderson can write like mediocre and it's still somehow great. I don't understand that. Like, I would read anything he wrote. I would read his grocery list. He's amazing. Basically, in this book, we are following Vin. And Vin is more of a street urchin kind of person. She lives with like a gang of seedy thieves, basically, not good people. And is, I can't give too much away. And she is in a world, it's a different world. It's not Earth. There's always ash falling from the sky, and the rich are rich and the poor are poor. The poor are called Ska, and she is a Ska, and she is poor, and she lives on the streets basically, except for this gang. And then one day she is picked out of the gang and realized that she is more than she appears to be. And I can't give much more away from that. There are just characters in this book that I love, and I'm excited to read the next one. I usually need to digest books for a few weeks before I dive into sequels, so I will get to it. And I give this a 5.5 technically and a 5.5 personally, because everybody should read it. It's great. So there. The next book I read this month is One Dark Crown by Kendar Blake. Now, this book, I wasn't expecting to like it that much because I really didn't like the first one, but it was getting all this hype and people are like, oh, you should read it. And I was like, okay, I'm going to read it. But the first book was super slow. I have to say 75% of the book, I was like literally falling asleep. So I just struggled. I struggled through it. Basically, it's about three sisters who come of age at the same time, and then they have to like fight each other, and there's one winner, and that winner becomes queen of the island. Seriously, that is the plot. So it kind of sounds like a weird King of the Hill type thing, but first book did have good characters and everything, had really slow development and a really slow plot, and not much happened. But this one, a lot happened, and I liked it much, much more. I gave this a 3.9 personally, and more of a 3.5 on the technical scale. I thought that technically it was still just, it was better than the last one, but it wasn't amazing. The writing was a little bit better, and maybe it's just we had all that backstory so we could just jump into the plot and jump into the characters, and that was great. It did pick up right where the last one left off, and I always like that in a book. I can't talk a lot about this without doing spoilers because it is the second book in the series, but the thing at the end on the thing and the thing, if you know what I'm talking about, I was excited about that. And then where they left the people at the end, I was like, well, I'm pretty sure there's going to be one more or maybe even two more, but I kind of like where they left it because of things, but we'll see. The next book I read was Wonder Woman Warbringer by Leigh Bardugo. This is the second Leigh Bardugo book that I have read, and I have to say, I love her writing. She's ridiculous. How is it everything she writes, I love. Like, yeah. This is following Wonder Woman, but not the movie, though I could not help but have Gal Gadot in my head the entire time as Wonder Woman, because dude, she's hot. She is Wonder Woman. So in this one, instead of a hot guy crashing on the island, it is like a teenage girl. I think she's 17 years old, and it is modern day, not in the early 1900s. So for starters, her being on the island, she's being treated differently than she was in the movie. So you can kind of keep some of the visuals from the movie, but plot-wise, I want you to put that all out of your head when you read this book, because it is different. Now, this is also going to be in a series. Different authors are going to write them, but there's going to be a Batman and a Superman and something else I don't remember. But I will probably read those and hope that they're good, but this one might have spoiled me for them because she's just such a good writer. I just think she could write on a dish towel and it would be, you know, epic because she's just a great writer. So basically, Alia crashes near the island and Diana goes and saves her. And because she saved her, the island itself is rebelling and angry, and people start getting sick, and there are like these earthquakes and things like this never happened on the island. And a side note, the island is slightly different than it is in the movie too. It's great backstory. Great. They figure out pretty quickly that it's Alia that is the problem. And so the solution is to kill her. But Diana's like, we can't kill her. We don't kill people. So of course Diana says, okay, I will take her home. I will fix this. And why it's called Warbringer, I don't I don't want to spoil you for that. I want you to kind of experience that one yourself because they reveal why it is and then you learn more about it as it goes on, and it's pretty great. I will say there were some bits about this that were a tiny bit predictable, but then again, there were bits that I didn't see coming, and I loved that too. It did keep me guessing the whole time. I was like, oh, it's this person. No, it's that person. And it's Miss Scarlet in the lounge with the candlestick. And it wasn't. I think I rated this a 4.2, and thinking back, I could almost rate it a 4.5. I really, really did like this book. I am happy that I own it and I have it because it is one of those books I think I would seriously love to reread and down the road. And yeah, I loved this one. And technically, I think I rated about a 3.9, but I could even go to 4.0 because just the fact that she can suck you in with her writing, and she could write something as popular as a movie, but then change it up and it's still incredibly successful, is good writing. The next book I read this month was The Aeronauts Windlass by Jim Butcher. This is the one that I picked off of my get a hold of your shelf thing that I do every month. It was read the biggest book on your TBR, and this one was my biggest book on my TBR. I think the problem with this book is, and it's heavy, so I'm not going to hold it up the whole time, I wasn't in the mood to read it. And because I wasn't in the mood to read it, I just think I didn't like it as much as I would have liked it. I generally really like Jim Butcher and I like his writing. I'm rarely disappointed. And actually the writing was good. I gave it a technical rating of like 3.5 because it was very, very good. I would say Jim Butcher is pretty consistently between a 3.5 and a 4.5 technically for me. But personally, I gave it a 3.0. I just wasn't in the mood for this book. Now, I feel terrible about that. I know so many people that have read this and love this and are like, oh, it's so good and the world, and it's kind of a steampunk world, and that's great. But I was not drawn in and captivated. I was a little bored, a lot of characters, a lot of setup. I think I was probably 50% of the way through the book before I started to see the plot start to progress in the way of the book plot, and I was at least 75% of the way through it before we knew who the villain was and what they were doing and why they wanted it. Like, it was not a quick book. Now, it is a first book, so it's probably setting it up for other things in the series, and I understand that, but I think because I wasn't in the mood to read it, I gave it a little bit of a lowball read. However, I will say that when the next book in the series does come out, I will read it. I will. I just think I need to wait till I'm more in the mood. This is what happens when I push myself to read and I don't want to read. I give low ratings like this. It really is what happens. Basically, this is a book. It is a steampunk novel, and ships, they fly in the air, not on the water. And it's a pretty complicated universe as well. And I don't feel like we have one main character. I feel like we have numerous characters, and they're kind of a military, like a kid's military. And they're supposed to be protecting this town, but they're like the trainees. And then the town gets attacked by the big bad. I mean, and that's about all I can tell you. I couldn't tell you the names of all the characters because there were so many. And I couldn't tell you the name of all the cities and the boats and everything because there were so many. And I think if you like steampunk, you would probably really like this book. I also wouldn't rush. I was rushing through this book, and it took me like 6 days to read it. And I know you're probably like, well, that's really quick because it's like a 700-page book. And it is, and I'm not a quick reader, but I was like booking it to get through this book because I had so many other books I wanted to get to this month. And maybe that's another reason I didn't enjoy it. Sorry, guys. The next book I read is From a Certain Point of View by 40 different authors. This is 40 different short stories all about A New Hope, Star Wars, the movie, the good one. They're all from like little characters' point of views. So we have like Aunt Beru, and we have tons of them. Like everything from like the little cleanup droid on the one of the ships. I don't remember which one. The thing is, I do love Star Wars. I love the movies. I grew up watching A New Hope and 5 and 6 so much as a kid, and I really enjoyed them. But I do not know, like, the Tauntaun's name that killed so-and-so. Like, I'm like, who? Like, I literally was texting my brother-in-law, and I'm like, who is this person? Oh, there. So they were just standing on the edge of the screen. Yeah. Okay. But it's great. 40 different authors. A lot of them that you have heard of, I promise you. Okay, so here are some of the authors. We have Renee Ahdieh, someone that you guys would probably know. Pierce Brown, Meg Cabot, Ray Carson, Adam Christopher, Paul Dani. These are the ones I've heard of at least. Will Wheaton. I didn't even know he wrote. Will Wheaton. Saba Tahir. and so many more. I'm not even getting them all on here. Anyway, it was a delightful book. I listened to it, and they have all these different people reading it as well. And then they have like the sound effects of Star Wars in there too. It was really fun. My brother-in-law told me to read it. I read it. I loved it. It was great. It was fun. And I'm thinking, what did I rate this one? I gave it a 4.0. No? Yeah, I gave it a 4.0 personally, which means I did enjoy it. I don't know if it's something I necessarily want to read again, but it did make me want to watch Star Wars, so I did watch the first 3 last week. I'll probably watch Rogue One sometime this next week, and then I will continue on because it really put me in the Star Wars kind of mood. I gave it a 4.4 technically. It was really hard to... Those are my dogs. It was really hard to actually put a technical rating on it because there are just so many authors. And so many of the authors were great. There was a few authors that I was like, whatever. And then there were a bunch that I was like, they're so great. So if you like Star Wars, you should really read this book because it was totally enjoyable. If you like audiobooks, listen to it because I think it was even better because of that. The last book I read this month was a series of unfortunate events, the 13th book, The End. It is over. I have read all of them and now I can watch the Netflix series. I'm so happy. This was a massive disappointment. With the buildup of 12 books, I expect something at the end. I had more unanswered questions and it was completely irritating because all I wanted to know was, what happened to their parents? They said that there was one of them alive. Nothing. I just spoiled the book for you guys. That's okay. I'm saving you time because the ending was crap. I gave it a 2.8 personally. I don't even know why I gave it such a high rating. I gave it a 2.5 technically. I didn't like it. I was super disappointed. I kept thinking something's going to happen. I know it's called a series of unfortunate events. It's supposed to be all these crappy bad things that happen to these kids, but it wasn't great. It was incredibly anticlimactic. It was just kind of pathetic and sad, and I didn't really like it. And I still had lots of questions, and I was irritated because nobody answered my questions. So there. So those are the books that I read this month. Let me know down below if you have read any of these books or your thoughts on any of these books. Or if you're like, hey, the best book you read this month was blah, let me know. Going by my rating system, the best book I read this month was Mistborn. The best new book that I read this month would be Warbringer by Leigh Bardugo. It was great. You guys should totally read this book. Thank you guys so much for watching. I love that you watch my videos. It means the world to me. Feel free to like, subscribe, or share. I post videos on Tuesdays and Fridays, so you can see me then. Goodbye. Totally lost my train of thought. I have no idea what I was saying now.